Pakistan's Taliban has warned of more attacks against the law enforcement officers just a day after 4 people were killed when a suicide squad had stormed into a police compound in Karachi. Now, the terrorists in fact killed 4 people, including 1 civilian, in a gunfight. There were a series of explosions that were reported, and eventually the terrorists were of course killed, and one of the terrorists is said to have blown himself up inside the police compound. The opposition leader and former Prime Minister Imran Khan has called the attack as a state failure. He's called for a clear, proactive anti-terrorism policy. Meanwhile, Karachi's residents are still in a state of shock.
कल जो हुआ है जिस दहशतगर्दी की वजह से हम लोग पब्लिक में खौफ और फैल गया, कोई अपने घर से निकला नहीं, हालात बहुत ख़राब हो गए थे, रोड जैम हो गए थे, पब्लिक अपने घर से निकल नहीं रही थी, तो हमें भी बहुत इफेक्ट पड़ा, इवन दो हम पूरी रात के जागे।
दहशतगर्दी की बहुत बड़ी अलामत करने आए थे, क्योंकि इन लोगों ने जिस तरीके से कराची थाने के ऊपर हमला करा, ये कोई 3 से 4 अफराद थे, लेकिन 3 से 4 घंटे तक इन लोगों ने मुकाबला किया। हमारी पुलिस ने भी अच्छा मुकाबला किया, लेकिन एंड में आके हमारी जीत हुई, पुलिस की जीत हुई।
The local media has questioned the failure of the security establishment with faulty CCTV cameras and also inadequate police preparedness. Reports say that 3 security checkpoints near the building were in fact unmanned, and one side of the building had no CCTV coverage whatsoever. A police officer from the Special Security Unit and also a member of Pakistan's paramilitary Rangers was one amongst those who were killed. The Pakistani Taliban has taken responsibility for the attack. The TTP, that is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, has recently increased attacks on the police in the northwest of Pakistan as part of its campaign against the government in Islamabad. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what's actually happening in Pakistan in the aftermath of these attacks that have taken place, we're being joined by Hassan Kamal Wattu, who's a columnist and also a lawyer. Mr. Wattu, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on WION. And the question that I want to ask you is this. This is yet another attack that has been claimed by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. It has targeted another police station, and this time it's happened in Karachi. Now, how is Pakistan even planning to deal with the Pakistani Taliban, considering that there's been a spate of attacks that have happened in the course of the last 3-4 months?
Well, yes, that's right. There has been an alarming rise in terrorism lately. It's been deeply saddening to see the loss of life in Pakistan, and it was seen as the sort of inevitable geopolitical shockwave that would result after the fall of Kabul, as we saw about a year or so ago. But if there's one thing that I would like to make known to the international audience, and particularly audiences watching in India, it is that these geopolitical shockwaves don't end at Pakistan. Pakistan does not exist in a vacuum. And it is absolutely in the interests of India for Pakistan to be stable as well, to have good relations with Pakistan, to have relations of peace. Pakistan has been the greatest victim of terror on the planet since the war on terror commenced in 2001. Over 80,000 lives lost. Just last night in Karachi, 4 more lives lost, and a sort of open war waged by this faction that seems to disregard the legitimacy of any government and seems to want to overthrow it and wage an open war against it. So I would definitely question and ask to the well-wishing audiences on the other side of the border whether they agree with their External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, when he decides to paint Pakistan with the broad brush of being a supporter of terrorism, which is in fact the greatest victim, when he seeks to paint a very sort of simplistic view, ignoring the nuances and ignoring the inevitability that you have to sit on the same table, you have to come together and work mutually as two responsible nations on the global stage.
I just want to point out something interesting, and this was something that was said by Hillary Clinton when she was the Secretary of State, that these attacks that are happening in Pakistan are all being carried out by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Ever since 2006, 2007, since this group came into prominence, there has been one attack after another that has been perpetrated by this group. We seem to have lost our line with Mr. Wattu there. We'll try and reconnect with him again. But this is the latest attack that has unfolded in Karachi, where in what was essentially a suicide attack, terrorists stormed into a police headquarters And one of the terrorists is also said to have blown himself up inside the compound of the police headquarters. And I'm told that we have got Mr. Wattu back again online. Now, Mr. Wattu, it's very interesting what you are saying, that you're saying that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. Now, the question that I want to ask you is this. Now, over the course of the last couple of decades, as a matter of state policy, Pakistan had been supporting the Taliban. And now, the Pakistani Taliban, which is said to be very closely allied to the Afghan Taliban, has declared an open war on the Pakistani state with the intention that they want to destroy the Pakistani state as it exists and impose a kind of rule that the Pakistani Taliban wants. Do you think Pakistan is now paying a price for the policies that it has pursued in the last couple of decades?
Well, I personally have been one of the harshest critics of Pakistani foreign policy when it comes to Afghanistan over the last decades, going back to the Soviet invasion and going back to the support of the Mujahideen. Can one blame the United States for supporting the Mujahideen and then turning back when they turned their guns on them? When it comes to matters of foreign policy, this sort of duplicity and this backstabbing and this saying one thing, putting one thing to the public, doing another thing at the back, countries across the globe are doing it. There's no end to when you begin a sort of retelling of history and going back into who started first, who began which fight, and where does it go from now. But what I'm focused on right now is that people are losing their lives now. Right now, innocent Pakistani people are the ones who are the victims of this. Now, when it comes to a foreign policy debate, going back into the histories of what some ruler might have done 20 years ago,
into the history of Pakistan's foreign policy. My point was very simply this. Now, Pakistan is fighting essentially a war against the Pakistani Taliban. This is a group that was supported in some ways by the Pakistani establishment, the deep state. So the question that I want to ask you is, do you think the Pakistani deep state is now serious on clamping down on these terror outfits that are essentially causing havoc inside Pakistan?
Well, I can't comment on what the Pakistani deep state is or isn't interested in. What I can visibly observe is that the Indian visible state, the External Affairs Minister, doesn't seem to view any sort of nuance or any room for dialogue with a nation of 220 million at its border.
I think you're again getting confused. What has happened in Karachi yesterday is essentially a matter that concerns only Pakistan. And I think Pakistan needs to address that. And unless you recognize what the problem is, you would not be able to address it in the manner that this issue needs to be addressed.
Well, yes, of course. Nobody would disagree with the fact that terrorism needs to be addressed. Nobody would disagree with the fact that terrorism is bad. But when it comes to international relations, I don't think that India can pretend that this is Pakistan's problem. We can completely separate ourselves from it. They can go and sort of jibe at it and laugh at it like, oh, the state seems to be falling in on itself. I think that's a terrible mistake, and it would be catastrophic for Indian lives as well. Even if I can't manage to appeal to conscience, I can appeal to self-interest. I can say that for India and for the global community at large, working with Pakistan, supporting Pakistan, and sort of ending this iron curtain that's fallen between them, in which we won't speak to each other, won't engage with each other. We'll sort of take these regressive steps like the abrogation of Article 370. I think those are not conducive to the interest of peace. They're not conducive to the interest of saving lives. And in order to build a sort of harmonious region, or harmonious South Asia, these countries will have to sit together. It begins with dialogue. It begins with people-to-people connections. I wish well for the people of India, and I hope that they will wish well for the victims of terrorism in Pakistan.
All right. Mr. Wattu, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us on WION. And this, of course, is a big story that's unfolded in Pakistan. We'll track this very closely. But thank you very much indeed for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.